For most people, the smell comes first, before the previews, before the lights dim, before the opening credits. That warm, buttery scent drifting through a movie theater lobby feels automatic now, like it was always meant to be there. But popcorn didn't start as a movie theater staple. In fact, for years, theaters didn't want it anywhere near their buildings. Popcorn's rise inside movie theaters wasn't about tradition, it was about survival. In the early days of cinema, movie theaters were modeled after legitimate theaters and opera houses. They were formal spaces, plush seats, heavy curtains, carpeted floors. Theaters wanted to attract middle and upper class audiences, and food was seen as messy, noisy, and beneath the experience. Popcorn, in particular, was considered a nuisance. It was cheap. It was loud to eat. It left kernels and grease behind. Theater owners worried it would cheapen the atmosphere and damage their interiors. So for years, popcorn stayed outside, literally. In the 19 teens and 20s, popcorn vendors set up carts on sidewalks outside theaters. Moviegoers would buy popcorn before or after shows, but rarely inside. Theater owners tolerated it because the vendors were independent and the demand was clearly there. Then the Great Depression changed everything. As the economy collapsed in the 1930s, theaters faced a crisis. Ticket sales dropped, audiences shrank. Many people could no longer afford regular entertainment. Movies were still one of the cheapest escapes available, but even that was a stretch for many families. Popcorn, however, thrived. It was incredibly inexpensive to produce. Corn kernels were cheap. Popcorn machines were relatively affordable, and popcorn could be sold at a profit even when everything else was struggling. For struggling theater owners, that mattered. Some theaters began allowing popcorn inside, others bought their own machines and started selling it themselves. What had once been seen as a threat to elegance suddenly became a financial lifeline. Popcorn didn't just supplement ticket sales, in many cases, it kept theaters open. There was another advantage too. Popcorn didn't require plates, utensils, or kitchens. It could be made fresh, quickly, and in front of customers. The popping sound and smell became a form of advertising, pulling people in from the street. By the late 1930s, popcorn wasn't just tolerated in theaters, it was welcomed. World War II sealed the deal. During the war, sugar was rationed, making candy harder to produce and more expensive. Popcorn, which relied on corn rather than sugar, wasn't affected in the same way. As a result, popcorn became the dominant snack option almost by default. Movie theaters leaned into it. By the 1940s, popcorn had become a standard concession. It was affordable for customers and extremely profitable for theaters. Unlike tickets, which were often split with film distributors, concession sales stayed almost entirely with the theater. That economic reality still shapes theaters today. As film distribution evolved, studios increasingly took larger shares of ticket revenue, especially during opening weeks. Concessions became the primary way theaters made money. Popcorn, with its high profit margin and low production cost, became essential. Over time, popcorn and movies became psychologically linked. Audiences grew up associating the sound of kernels popping with anticipation. The act of buying popcorn became part of the ritual. It marked the transition from the outside world into the shared darkness of the theater. Even when people weren't hungry, they bought it. That habit wasn't accidental. Theaters placed popcorn machines strategically. They vented the smell into lobbies. They sized containers to encourage sharing and excess. Popcorn wasn't just food, it was experience design. And unlike hot meals, popcorn worked in the dark. It could be eaten by hand. It didn't require attention. It didn't distract from the screen. It allowed audiences to snack without looking down, keeping focus on the film. That practicality mattered. As multiplexes expanded in the late 20th century, popcorn scaled perfectly. It worked in small neighborhood theaters and massive multi screen complexes. It could be flavored, upsized, bundled, and branded. Popcorn became flexible without losing its identity. By the time home video arrived, popcorn's association with movies was already deeply embedded. People began popping popcorn at home specifically for movie nights, reinforcing the connection even outside theaters. Today, popcorn is so tied to movies that it's hard to imagine one without the other. But that connection wasn't inevitable. It was the result of economic pressure, smart adaptation, and decades of habit building. Popcorn didn't win over theaters because it was classy. It won because it worked. It was cheap during hard times, profitable when margins shrank, practical in dark rooms, and comforting across generations. What began as a sidewalk snack became a cornerstone of the movie-going experience. And every time a bag rustles during a quiet scene or a kernel pops underfoot after the credits roll, It's a reminder of how something simple, affordable, and once unwanted became inseparable from the magic of the movies, not because it was planned that way, but because it survived when theaters needed it most. That's how popcorn became the movie theater treat.